Air travel is considered one of the safest journeys in the world. But what if a plane disappears after entering the sky? Well, in today's video, I will be telling you about the most mysterious flights that vanished into thin air, taking their passengers with them. So, let's begin our countdown. Air France 447. Friends, this story is from June 2009. On this day, the aircraft's Flight 447 was en route from Brazil to Paris. The flight had 216 passengers and 12 crew members on board. Due to its considerable length, 3 pilots were present, including a senior captain from France. All passengers were seated, and the plane was ready for takeoff at its scheduled time. The pilot obtained takeoff permission from air control, and after receiving approval, the aircraft took off. 2 pilots were handling the flight, while the third pilot was in standby position. Everything was going smoothly in the normal routine, and the pilots were in communication with air traffic control. As the plane reached an altitude of 35,000 feet, suddenly, the sky became intensely cloudy and lightning started to flash ahead. The senior pilot informed the control room that the weather ahead was severe, but they couldn't see anything in front. The control room instructed them to carry on in the same manner. A few kilometers ahead, the sky was completely clear. Nevertheless, they followed the instructions and didn't make an emergency landing. Fortunately, Flight 447 managed to navigate out of the storm after 4 hours of flying and reached the mid-Atlantic Ocean. The plane encountered a dead zone in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The headquarters informed them that their communication would soon be lost due to this dead zone. Shortly after, the pilot lost contact with the control room. Now, they needed to establish contact with the Paris aircraft controller upon leaving the dead zone. However, that didn't happen. The Paris headquarters did not receive any messages from Flight 447 for 2 hours. They tried multiple attempts to contact the pilot, but received no response. When 2 hours passed without communication, the headquarters alerted Air France that it was time for the flight to land. However, there was no trace of the plane. Air France controllers, along with a research team from Brazil, began searching, suspecting that the plane might have crashed into the sea. Despite numerous efforts, they couldn't locate the plane, and none of the 228 people on board, including the crew, were found. Even after extensive efforts, the fate of this airplane remains one of the most mysterious incidents. No one knows what happened to Air France's flight, and the whereabouts of the people on board are still unknown. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to be the first to watch informative videos. Air Asia 851, on December 28, 2014, an Indonesian flight, Air Asia 851, was en route to Singapore. The total number of passengers on this flight was 160. The plane took off at its scheduled time, and the journey proceeded normally with 2 highly experienced pilots at the controls. This 2-hour flight maintained continuous contact with the control room, and nothing unusual was reported during the flight. The plane was passing over the Java Sea, heading towards its destination, when, after only 45 minutes since takeoff, it suddenly disappeared from the air traffic radar. Air traffic controllers made multiple attempts to contact the pilots, but there was no response. They even contacted the Singapore headquarters, but the radar didn't pick up any signals from the missing plane. The air controllers were puzzled as to how the plane could vanish so abruptly. They initiated a search immediately, assuming there might be a technical issue or that the plane had crashed into the sea. However, no trace of the plane was found. 3 months after the disappearance, an Indonesian submarine was heading into the sea. The mystery of what happened to Air Asia 851 remains unsolved, and the fate of the plane and its occupants remains unknown. However, 3 months later, an Indonesian submarine conducting deep-sea exploration spotted a plane in the ocean depths. Upon investigation, it was revealed to be the same Air Asia 851 that had gone missing while en route from Indonesia to Singapore. The wreckage contained the bodies of 106 individuals. According to information retrieved from the plane's black box, only 22 minutes into the flight, a sudden and severe storm emerged in the sky. The pilot decided to ascend to a higher altitude to avoid the storm. However, before they could inform the control room, the plane's computer system began to malfunction. Instead of notifying the control room, the pilot tried to fix the issue. Unfortunately, the situation worsened rapidly as the entire computer system of the plane failed. The plane started rolling in the sky, and despite the pilot's efforts to regain control, the roll intensified. After ascending into the sky, the plane began a rapid descent. The pilot realized that the plane was about to crash, and despite their efforts, they couldn't prevent it. Eventually, the aircraft crashed into the sea, resulting in the tragic death of all passengers and crew on board. This incident was truly terrifying. Let's move on to our next plane in the list. On the night of May 5, 2007, a Kenya Airways flight was en route to Nairobi with 6 crew members and 114 passengers on board. As the flight was preparing for takeoff, rain started and the weather turned adverse. The pilots contacted the control room before takeoff to inquire about the weather. The radar suggested that if they kept the plane to the left, they could avoid the approaching storm. Following the instructions, the pilots took off in a normal manner, despite the challenging weather conditions. The flight was scheduled to land at Nairobi Airport 8 hours after takeoff. However, when 45 minutes had passed since the expected landing time and the plane had not landed, the Nairobi headquarters contacted the control room. They inquired about the flight, and the controllers were perplexed as they, too, had no idea where the plane was. The pilots did not establish contact with the headquarters, and the controllers made several attempts to reach them. The lack of communication raised concerns. Neither did the pilots contact the headquarters, nor did they disclose their whereabouts. The air controllers made persistent efforts to establish contact, but unfortunately, they were unsuccessful. When all efforts proved futile, authorities dispatched a search team to locate the missing plane. It might astonish you to learn that for 2 days, the search team relentlessly combed the area, but there was no trace of the aircraft. Finally, they discovered pieces of the crashed plane in a jungle, approximately 5 kilometers from the airport. Upon investigation, it was confirmed that this was indeed the same plane that had gone missing. What added to the astonishment was the magnitude of the crash, yet the surrounding areas had no knowledge of it. Furthermore, it was perplexing that the pilots had not made any contact with the headquarters, nor did they disclose their location. However, when the black box of the plane was recovered, the entire truth unfolded. Shortly after the takeoff, a severe thunderstorm unexpectedly emerged in the sky. This was particularly unexpected for the pilots, as they had followed instructions by keeping the plane to the left. According to the recordings, they were deeply alarmed, attempting to switch the plane to normal mode using the autopilot. However, before they could take any action, the plane abruptly veered to the right. In reality, due to the storm, the aircraft couldn't maintain its balance, and it began to roll to the right. Both pilots desperately tried to level the plane, but the air pressure was too intense for the aircraft to correct itself. Eventually, the plane crashed in the jungle. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already to be the first to watch informative videos.